Innovative.
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 Many think of New England as one of the old conservative parts of the U.S. This is true, but there is also a lot of innovative activity happening here. Today's program takes us to a major newspaper, an important university, a pharmaceutical laboratory, and a museum to show the new dynamic aspects of Massachusetts. The Boston Globe has been the main newspaper in the region since 1872 and has always found innovative ways to serve its readers. Listen to an employee who combines artistic creativity and state-of-the-art computing to discover how today's print media is produced.
My name's Natalie DeFlotte, and I'm art director for the calendar section at the Boston Globe. And I'd like to show you some pages that I've been working on over the last couple of months. One of the things that we try to do with the cover of the section is to really make it different from the rest of the paper. The cover isn't a news story. It's not anything that happened this morning. It's not a fire. It's the cover of an entertainment section. And we want people to know that right away when they see it. So we really try and do something innovative with the covers. This cover was for a story about astronomy and different places to go to observatories and see what's in the sky. So we have a lion for Leo. We have a moon. We have a cow jumping over the moon. A Martian. So different things that people could find in the sky, and we wanted the story to have appeal to young children, so that's why we chose this approach. This was another cover there's a section of Massachusetts called the Cape, and it's shaped a little bit like an arm. So when people say, I'm going to Orleans or I'm going to Provincetown, they point to places on their arm to say where they're going. So when we were planning our annual issue for Cape Cod, where many people go to take their vacations, we thought it would be funny to take things out of the story and have it written on somebody's arm. But in fact, nobody would have been able to read it if we'd actually written it on the arm. So this was all done with what's called photo illustration, and I can show you how I put this together. This might take a minute to open up because it's a very large file. But I did the type in one program, and then I looked for little images of fish or suns or whatever I wanted to put on the arm to make it look like a tattoo. And I scanned those and then put them all together on the arm. And you'll be able to see that in just a minute. The type looks like handwriting, but it was actually done, there's a font, a typeface, that looks like handwriting. So I didn't actually have to write all this. I just used a typeface that looked like handwriting, and then put it on curves, and then brought that into this program. So here you see the whole thing together. And each one of these items is on a different layer. And these are all the layers that I had to create to do this. So, for instance, you can see when certain things start disappearing because I made them hide. You can see pieces of type going away, and I put them on different layers so that I could move them around and see where they looked best. If the type had just been on a straight line, it might not have looked three-dimensional. So I thought it was an interesting, not your usual scene on the beach. I mean, that's very pretty, but it doesn't make people stop and think about, laugh or whatever. We have a cow jumping over the moon.
A cow jumping over the moon is a phrase that comes from a children's story that everyone knows in America.
There's a font, a typeface, that looks like handwriting.
A font or a typeface is a style for letters used on a computer. Harvard University is well known for its business school. See how a female professor has broken down the barriers to provide innovative management training for business people worldwide.
My name is Linda Hill. I'm a professor at the Harvard Business School. I've been a professor for 14 years. I am in the organizational behavior area here at the school. I am the head or the chair of our course on leadership for the MBA program. And so my responsibility is to develop materials and make sure those materials get delivered to our students that will help them understand how to manage the human side of the organization or the enterprise. What I've been working on the last couple of years is we've been trying to globalize our curriculum to make sure that our students are prepared to work in any part of the world. So I have been spending a lot of time in emerging market settings. I just recently came back from China and doing a project there. I am off to South Africa next month to work on some case materials on some of the dilemmas of working in a business in a country that's really going through a lot of political change as well. In September, we will be going to Latin America to look at the development of television products for the markets in Brazil and Argentina. And so, again, right now, what I really find myself doing is trying to think through issues of globalization and how that relates to leadership responsibilities that managers will have in the future. A number of years ago, the dean at the school asked me if I would help the school figure out how to be more innovative in our use of technology in the classroom. And when the dean first approached me about this, I was curious and said I'd be willing to have some conversations about how we might use technology in our classroom. As it turned out, one of my former students had worked, I believe, for Apple, and he had worked in multimedia. He had been very excited, I'm embarrassed to say, or pleased to say, I guess, by a book I had written on becoming a manager. And he had an idea about how we could take my book and turn it into a multimedia product that people could use themselves to do self-directed learning and learn about some of the key areas of leading and managing. So I have been spending a lot of time in emerging market settings.
This is the business term for countries whose economies are developing and moving into the world market.
A number of years ago, the dean at the school asked me if I would help the school figure out how to be more innovative.
The dean is the head of a university department responsible for the content.
I might not have 5 minutes if I'm talking with our most important client.
Betsy, time isn't the issue. You know, you do have a reputation for not collaborating.
Who said I'm not collaborating?
Well, no one, they didn't say that exactly. They just, well, no, look, I'm not at liberty to say.
A reputation has to be based on something. I can't expect to deal with this phantom reputation.
Research shows that coaching skills improve with practice. The best way to learn to coach is simply do it. But in this case, Lois has tackled a complicated situation without adequate preparation. Taking time to prepare will help prevent mistakes.
Betsy, time isn't the issue.
Issue is a common word for an important topic which needs to be discussed.
Who said I'm not collaborating?
Collaborating is a term like cooperating or working together with others.
I'm not at liberty to say.
I'm not at liberty to say means I don't have the permission or the freedom to tell you something.
We began this project. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I knew nothing about multimedia. And before I knew it, he had brought in people from Los Angeles who were very good at developing multimedia product. I had to meet with graphic artists. I had to meet with script writers, just a whole slew of people that I'd never come into contact with before, because the production of a multimedia product is actually quite a complex team effort. And so we embarked on the task of seeing if we could take a book and turn it into a multimedia product. And the advantages of that would be, one, that the individual could use it either at his desk or her desk. We could also sell it to the corporate market, so if a manager wasn't able to get to a training program or go to a school, they could do it from their home. They could also do it in a way that fit their schedules. If they like to study at night, they could study at night. If they like to study early in the morning, they could study early in the morning. So it was a very flexible product that people could use in the way that they wanted to use it, so that fit their lifestyle. So for me, it has been really an adventure to try to figure out how you take ideas and take full advantage of the interactive quality of the technology to provide people with an entertaining but educational experience that will expose them to some of the complexities of leading and managing. What I particularly liked about it is we were able to take cases that we had developed about real situations. We hired actors to act out the various roles, and we could have people really watch in real time using full action video a situation that had happened. So they could get a feel for not simply, they could get a feel for the emotions that people were experiencing and what it really is like in the workplace. We could also give them a feel for the different kinds of people that are in the workplace, people from different backgrounds. We made sure to have case protagonists that were women, men from the US, from the Far East, from various countries in Europe. So we were able to actually show people what went on.
Lois, it's Mike. I'm in Montreal. Sorry we're doing this by phone. Sounds like your conversation with Betsy didn't go too well. Listen, both Ben Thayer and Ming Tu have worked with Betsy in the past. Her reputation is not phantom. My advice is to prepare carefully for another talk. If you have questions, leave voicemail. Oh, yeah, document everything.
And then the individual gets to work through and make decisions and see what happens. If I make this decision after this interaction, this might happen. If I make that decision, another thing would happen. So they get a sense of cause and effect, the consequences of their action. Plus, we could give them some information about how to think about, reflect on what had happened in the particular situation. So the technology actually allowed me to take cases I had written and actually make them more lively. Just a whole slew of people that I'd never come into contact with before.
Slew is a unique word for a large number of people or things.
And so we embarked on the task of seeing if we could take a book and turn it into a multimedia product.
When you embark, you start something new. It's also when you get on an airplane.
In a way that fit their schedules.
Schedule in the U.S. is pronounced schedule as opposed to schedule in Britain. Scientific developments in the medical field often come from innovative researchers in the U.S. Their efforts help people around the globe stay or become healthy. Join the employees of a medical technology laboratory to find out how they discover new drugs.
So let me tell you about this gel first.
Okay.
So Charles ran this gel, and these are plugs that I put the agar and the phenol, the dirt all together, did a quick mix, probably 2-second vortex, just to mix them.
Okay.
And then I put it on ice to solidify it.
Right.
So he ran this.
Those are the ones that stained the comb of the gel.
Yes, right. So they melted the comb. Right, exactly.
Right.
So he ran this.
Okay.
This is a low melt,
Right.
and he ran this in overnight gel. So I guess it's a TAE. I'm not sure if it's a TAE.
No, that'd be a TBE.
Okay. So the problem, of course, is that you see the streaking all the way down. So there's clearly
Right.
DNA there, but it's difficult to know how big it is. I mean,
Right.
you can see in his dirt plugs, he's got the high molecular weight band where it's
Right.
all stopping. But I think we're running into the same problem where the DNA is continuously electrophoresing out of the plug. Where the DNA is continuously electrophoresing out of the plug.
DNA is the basic genetic material that is used for all life on Earth.
My name is Ian McNeil. I work at Ariad Pharmaceuticals. Ariad's been around for about 5 years, a biotech company here in Cambridge, Massachusetts. It probably has 3 or 4 main areas of research. It started out as a signal transduction company using what's called rational drug design. And what that means is it's looking at a picture of a protein. So the normal way a pharmaceutical company would look for a new drug is they would go down to South America, for instance, and they would dig up soil and plants, they'd bring it back to the lab, they would try and find a new drug that would treat a disease, cure cancer, treat a bacterial infection. What companies are doing nowadays is they try to understand the biology of a disease. So, for instance, one of the diseases we are interested in here is osteoporosis. So we try to understand what are the cells in your body and also the proteins inside your cells that are important in that disease. Then we identify that protein and we actually take a picture of it. We purify it and we take a 3-dimensional picture so we see what this protein looks like. We can understand how it interacts with another protein, and we can, by looking at this picture of the protein, we can design a small molecule that will fit into a groove, for instance, in the side of that protein and inhibit its function. And that's called rational drug design. So, for instance, HIV, some of the new drugs that are being used to treat patients with HIV are protease inhibitors. And those were designed by taking a picture of the viral protease and then designing a small molecule that would fit in there and inhibit its function. So that's one aspect of Ariad. The second is, which is a relatively new part of Ariad, is the Genomics Center that occupies the 3rd floor of the building. That is funded in part by our collaboration with HMR. That is a new foray into looking at or trying to identify new targets that Ariad might try and develop drugs against. So, for instance, if we're interested in osteoporosis or osteopetrosis, we may want to look at new proteins that are involved in that disease. And this is a way of looking at a large number of proteins using a lot of technology. Again, identifying a target then would move in what we call Ariad Classic. We would do the same kind of thing. We would take a picture of that protein. We'd try and develop a small molecule inhibitor of that. So that's the Genomics Center. That's been around for probably about 6 to 8 months at this point. Another part of Ariad is our gene therapy group. That is involved in trying to develop a way to regulate gene therapy. So the way gene therapy works now is, let's say you are a diabetic, and now you inject yourself with insulin once a day or twice a day. One way of treating someone with diabetes using gene therapy is to take cells from you, take them out of you, put in a gene for insulin, then put the cells back in, and then those cells inside of you will make your insulin. You don't have to inject it anymore. Problem is that those cells will just make insulin all the time. There's no way to regulate that. And what Ariad has done is a way of actually regulating the expression of that insulin. So it mimics more what normally would happen in a normal person. That will fit into a groove, for instance, in the side of that protein.
A groove is a long, narrow cut in a surface. You also know this perhaps from records.
And inhibit its function.
Inhibit is a verb, and it means to prevent a process from happening before it starts.
The second is, which is a relatively new part of Ariad, is the Genomics Center.
Genomics is the scientific study of chromosomes and genes.
That is a new foray into looking at or trying to identify new targets.
Foray is the move into a new activity or a new job.
Kara, this gel that you ran last night, the mini preps, the minimal media. So, what kind of expression did you get?
Actually, this is the BHI.
Oh, and so this matches the Western gel that you showed us. Okay, so these are.
This is a time course.
Okay, so This is plus minus?
Yeah,
What
this
happened
lane's
time?
induced, this lane was not induced. I don't know.
Oh, that's
I
weird.
have to go back and check my
But we're
notes.
looking here, right, around this area
Yeah,
for the
bet-
band.
mhm.
So, you know, it's quite possible, we won't be able to tell until we have a tag, whether or not this protein, I don't know if you can see,
Yeah,
like, there seems to
yeah.
be something that's coming up. If this is a minus and plus?
Yes.
Okay, so right in there, I mean, that's what we're kind of expecting it
Yeah.
around that area.
And these two, this is the plus, and this is the minus. I got these two. I loaded this differently, but this is plus and that's minus. So if that helps explain, like,
Why
if you see
that's
something there.
right, right.
But
Today's world is dominated by computers. But how did they start, and where are they going next? A visit to the Computer Museum explains the history and shows innovative new technologies.
I'm Ellen Spear, and this is the oldest computer at the Computer Museum in Boston, and it's one of the gems of our historical collection. It's the Whirlwind computer, and in the early 1950s, it represented the most innovative electronic brain that was available in the United States. It was originally built as a flight simulator to help pilots learn how to fly jet fighters, but it was never actually used for that purpose. It was considered at the time the most powerful computer that was available, and it took up the size of approximately a 10-room house. It weighed 18 tons, and we understand that the heat generated by the computer was intolerable. So banks of fans were used to get the heat out of the room and keep the computer functioning. The Whirlwind computer is important to the Computer Museum because it represents the start of our historical collection. This computer was literally taken out of a trash bin behind Digital Equipment Corporation by its founder, Ken Olsen, in the early 1970s. He felt that this computer and other important machines that traced the history of computer technology would be important to preserve for the future so people could understand the incredible power of computing and how profoundly that they would eventually change society and change the way that we do business. What's interesting about this also, even though it was such a giant and it had such tremendous computing capability for the time, it only had the computing power of one of today's palm-top computers. Actually, it's about 70 times less powerful than a very small handheld computer that you can get on the market today. So while this is the oldest computer that we have in our collection, we'd like to show you also what represents the cutting edge and the latest in computer technology in another exhibit. And we understand that the heat generated by the computer was intolerable.
This is a term that means something is too bad to be tolerated. In this case, that the heat was too bad.
We'd like to show you also what represents the cutting edge and the latest in computer technology in another exhibit.
This is a modern term for the latest or most advanced developments in an area.
This is the virtual fish tank. It's the world's largest virtual aquarium. There are over 100 virtual fish in these virtual waters. And it helps us, through high technology and through advanced programming languages, understand some things that happen in the natural world. Through computer technology, we've learned that a lot of the things that we observe in nature are not because a leader, such as a lead fish in a school, decided which direction the school would go, but it's the result of a lot of individual decisions by fish, or a lot of individual decisions by drivers of what causes a traffic jam, or the stock market, which is the result of individual decisions of investors. All of these things are governed by something called complexity theory, and that's what our virtual fish tank explains. The way that we do it is through actually building a fish and determining what its behavior will be. By what rules we choose, its physical appearance is determined. So to build a fish, we can first decide whether or not he's hungry. If he's starving, his mouth will get larger and his teeth will get larger, and if he's full, his mouth will get smaller. If he's a calm fish, his eyes will be small and he'll be very relaxed, and if he's a terrified fish, his eyes will grow larger. We can decide what he's interested in. If he's a friendly fish, he'll come up and greet us. If he's a shy fish, he'll tend to move away. We can determine whether he enjoys bubbles in the water or is annoyed by them. And we can decide whether he likes bright objects or dislikes bright objects. And then we can decide where in the tank he would like to swim. If he'd like to swim on the bottom, or if he likes to swim above the ocean floor. Then we can put a tag on our fish so we'll remember who he is. And then we can release him into the tank and see what happens. Now we'll choose the behavior for an entire school of sharks in our tank. First, we can decide whether they're independent or whether they like to swim together. We can decide whether they should swim fast or slowly. And let's choose a behavior so that they swim in the same direction. And let's make them very, very hungry and see how they react. Such as a lead fish in a school decided which direction the school would go.
In English, we have many names for groups of animals. Fish live in a school.
Individual decisions by drivers of what causes a traffic jam.
Traffic jam is the term for too many cars on a street at one time.
This display helps us understand what causes traffic jams. When you're sitting in one, it's easy to think that it's being caused by the person who's right in front of you who's driving very slowly. But really, traffic jams are caused by individuals, drivers' decisions and individual drivers' behaviors. This helps us add cars singly, add them in groups, and then see what happens with 3 simple rules. The drivers in this display are using 3 rules that determine how fast they go. One rule is that if you get close to another car, slow down. Another rule is if you are not close to a car, speed up. The third rule is if there is police radar in the area, slow down. So those 3 individual rules help determine what happens with this traffic jam and the complex patterns that emerge, and it also explains what happens in Boston streets during rush hour.